Restream. Did that work for YouTube? We will soon find out. Hey, everybody. Hopefully we are live here. It's live before lock. NFL. A little bit of a scramble there. I'm sure some of you are going through similar technical difficulties. Sometimes that happens. It is a good reminder that we do need to have backup plans because not everything works the first time when we do it. And fingers crossed, I hope I see us pop up here in a second. And there we are. So this worked, even though it told me the Restream wasn't connected to my OBS. Yeah. But hey, guys, give me a thumbs up if you can at least hear me in the chat. So we'll be good. It's Nolan and your old pal Emac here, brought to you by One Fantasy Draft, as we are getting ready for a Monday night game that should be much, much better than last night's game. Last night's game, if you were a football purist, it was a good one. If you were a fantasy person, not so much.
I did not watch that game. I had a dinner to go to. So, and like, you know, everyone was saying how, I don't know, I guess it's a good game and big if you're fans of either one of those teams, but I could take it or leave it. I wasn't super fussed on it. So.
All right, let me message Josh, let him know he can go back to stewing in his whatever he stews in. Did you see him on the NBA show? He didn't have a hat on. Man, he's got a head of hair. I'm jealous.
Me too. Mine's going your way.
Yeah, I've always had kind of the higher forehead. Now it's the receding hairline. Fortunately, I don't have the friar tuck going on, but it is what it is. I say goodbye every morning to a few brave soldiers as they find their way down the drain. It happens.
Not getting too graphic here, but I'm starting to get ear hairs, Emac, and it's just like, like that's not good. No one wants that, right?
No. And my question is, how the hell can they be so vibrant when everything else stops growing? Yeah, just wait. It right? Gets. Let me just say, it gets worse. It gets worse.
I just want to be 20 again. That's all.
Yeah. I got one growing out of the top of my actual freaking ear, just black, and I'm like, where are you? You have many other places you could be going here, because my hair used to be basically black. Now it's more gray than anything else, heading its way towards white, particularly on the old goatee. We had one of our viewers call my goatee gradient because of the way it goes from dark to gray to kind of white here. I'm going to be a good Santa Claus at one of these points.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. That's your post DFS career. When you retire from DFS, you could be a mall Santa, no problem, Mac.
Yeah, that's if my dad had grown a beard, he would look just like one. My uncle, his brother, does have a beard, and he looks like Santa Claus. So that could be the way I go. But in any event, tonight, hopefully no coal in anybody's stocking. But we actually have, where's the implied run? 47.5 implied points. I'm just off trying to scramble on all these fun things, getting my lineups in tonight, much like everybody else. But they didn't have to come be on air. Now I'm on air and engaged. This one is much more exciting than last night. Last night's game, 37 implied over under. That's the lowest I've ever seen on a primetime slate in the last 4 years when I was writing articles for the primetime slate, which I have. I remember a couple that were like 40-41, but I don't remember anything in the 30s because generally those games end up getting flexed towards the end of the season with good teams, or they try to end up with the better teams on them for the premier marquee matchups. Last night, battle of good defenses. I mean, 1 and 2. The hell did the Buffalo Bills come from? Nolan, outside of Buffalo, I know that, but their defense we knew was going to be good. Their offense has survived, and what are they now? 10-5, I think. After last night,
no, one is that right?
Yeah,
no, we got 2 weeks left, so they got to be like 10-4.
Yeah, this was week 50. Oh, you're right. Yeah, 10-4, I think. 10-4, but surprising nonetheless. Yes, we still have 16 and 17, so and teams only play 16 total games. That always kind of throws me off, but everybody's through their buys. I just want to look at that, and then we'll talk about tonight's slate and what I'm doing. Hell, I might as well run a train. Seems to be what I'm doing everywhere else. Just call me the conductor, if you will.
Crazily enough, the Steelers have a 2-game lead as well.
Yeah, 10-4. 10-4. So they're 1 game behind the Patriots. That was not an outcome I was expecting this year at all. So, and LaShawn McCoy thought he was going from a team not making the playoffs to making the playoffs. Hey, he could have stayed put. But tonight's game does have a little bit of playoff implications. The Saints have clinched the NFC South, but the Colts have a little bit of life left in them. They don't control their destiny at this point, as best as I was trying to eyeball it here. But they are still mathematically alive to get a wild card position. They need to win out, and then they need help. So who knows what's going to happen? Because you say, "Oh, the Saints, they're so good at home." Well, last week your 49ers got it taken care of, and then got to be on the receiving end of that. I'm so glad I'm on a show with you tonight. They got to be on the receiving end of that last night.
We'll be fine. You come talk to me in a month about my 49ers. And we'll see.
All right, my Seahawks will be talking to you. I know that very soon, actually. But we have, the Saints have 3 losses. 2 of them came at home. Okay, 49ers are good. Who knew that they were going to have offense and their defense was going to fall apart? Then the other team that beat them was Atlanta. Came in and upset the Saints at home. Somehow Atlanta won. It's San Francisco, but Atlanta's not going to make the playoffs. So very, very odd. But this is an exciting game. We should see. Did we get inactive slot yet?
I'm sure we do. Yeah.
It's going to be T.Y. Hilton, since T.Y. Hilton was not involved.
No, he's in.
Okay. He wasn't involved on the NBA or NHL slates that locked at 7, so I was not worrying about him at the moment. So our assumption is if he is in, which he is, let's see. So Ross Travis is the guy who's sitting out. So the 3rd string tight end behind Mo Alley Cox. He's inactive tonight. T.Y. Hilton is active. My assumption is he should be at least 75-80%. We don't know. Yeah. He's missed in the last 5 games. He's missed 1. The only thing I would worry about is if they put him back. It's like if we don't win tonight, and we probably aren't going to win tonight, we're not going to make the playoffs. So what do? Do you risk further injury? I don't think so. Is he 100%? I also don't think so.
No, I don't think so. And if you look at T.Y. Hilton's stats, I was trying to find this. Someone tweeted it out, and I couldn't find it again. But his splits when he carries an injury designation are really pronounced. I think he averages something like 5 or 6 less fantasy points a game, primarily because he relies so much on his speed, right? So I'm a little bit worried about paying up for him at that price point. For me, this is really it's all about ownership and whether or not he's going to get a bunch. If he's going to get some, which I'm assuming he will, then I'm going to be fading a little bit on that side. But I'm just a little bit too worried. I think for a player like him that relies so much on his speed, I think I'm going to err on the side of not having too much of him tonight.
Well, this is good. Chat's having fun. They want us to talk about the game. We're going to. We absolutely are going to. We're getting there. We're waiting for some people to join in, because guess what? When we do these shows, then people come in and ask the very same questions we've just talked about, because people don't understand there's a little rewind button. So then they get mad that we don't talk about things. And to be fair, you absolutely do have the right to say what you would like to see in the chat. Not knocking that at all. Just saying it's a delicate balancing act here that now you know, if you haven't figured it out, why if you ever watch or listen to radio shows or do whatever, they do a little something in the beginning for the first couple minutes that really doesn't necessarily pertain to what they're doing. It's waiting for viewers and audience to be there. So chat, that's kind of why we do that. In any event, on to tonight's game, because clearly we should. So let's just start it off. Let's give people exactly what they want. Rip the Band-Aid off. Who's your captain? I think it's down to 2 people, and it's not on the first team.
It's definitely 2. I think Brees is just born for a nice util spot if you can fit him in 2 to 6. So right now our projections show Alvin Kamara 35% chance of being the top player, and Michael Thomas 29%. And of course, as is often the case with these high-priced guys, they're not getting the captain ownership that you would expect because they're so expensive, and it forces you to make decisions in other spots of your lineup. So we have 20% gap between Kamara and his projected ownership in the captain spot, making him a great play, I think, there. And the exact same, almost exactly the same for Michael Thomas. So those are going to be my 2 main captain spots today. I do like Kamara a little bit more. I think that historically the Indianapolis Colts have had a little bit of trouble with this zone defense and defending pass catching running backs. They've ranked in the bottom couple. I think last year and the year before, they were in the bottom 2 or 3 in receptions-led running backs and targets and yards. And this year they're a little bit better, but they're still bottom 10. So that to me is leads me towards Kamara in this situation, but I can also see going Thomas.
All right, moving on. Reminder, there is a companion article that goes with these shows where we talk about every position, and then I go through and rank all of the viable players into three categories: top 10, secondary plays, and lottery tickets. If you read the little section at the top, I know most of you won't because you're just looking for the names. It says these are based on player projections, potential popularity, and salary, price per dollar. Okay, so this is a generic list. If I was building one lineup of how I would rank everybody. Now you can't put just the top 5 people in the lineup because they're not going to fit. But then you start making choices, and this is where I'm going to be building my lineups. I see a couple people are a little salty that we didn't get to my lineup before the end of the show. But this is the best way that you can see it. I also am bombarded constantly with who do you like better, this guy or this guy, especially in on Twitter and DMs and chats. It's all in the article. Now, what we're going to talk about is the different way things put together because there's a lot more nuance that we can add when talking about this. So it's a nice companion piece to these shows, but neither are a standalone, but they both complement each other well. So just a reminder that is out there. So Nolan here, for me, I'm actually going to go with Michael Thomas as my captain.
Sounds good. You're just running one lineup, or just
Full point. Well, at this point, I haven't made a lineup, so probably just running one lineup and everything.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we're. I don't know if Fantasy Cruncher's back up, but if you're
it is back up. But
nice. So there you go. You can still get in before lock and make sure that you're saving a crunch or two and have a backup plan in case. It looks like we were down for about an hour there, but thankfully we are back up and good to go.
Yep. So for me, it's going to be Brees, and number 2 is Thomas. So they're both going to be in the majority of my lineups. Pardon me. Thomas is number 1. Full point PPR. I didn't have a chance to build my lineup over on FanDuel, so I'm going to have to give up on that one tonight. But for me, it's Michael Thomas. He leads the league, not just his team, the league in targets, yardage, and receptions. He is on pace to break the single season reception or catch record that is held. This is impressive by Marvin Harrison. That was set in 2002. That was 17 years ago. That one has held up to the test of time, even in today's game. But he is phenomenal. So in the full point PPR, I just want that. Now he just has 7 touchdowns, just 7 touchdowns on the year. But that, if you had to poke one hole in things, it would be that. The Saints surprisingly have not scored as many touchdowns as we would have thought. I believe this season they have, I think, 8 total on the ground, if I remember correctly. One of them's by Kamara. And then Kamara has 1 receiving touchdown. So skipping ahead, Kamara's falling down my ranks. Yeah, touchdown regression should be his friend at some point. Same thing with Leonard Fournette on the Jaguars, but we're not really seeing it. Julio Jones. There's sometimes these stretches last more than a season. So we'll have to see. But for me, those are the top 2 guys. Now, because I'm going with those 2 guys, all of a sudden I need to start looking at kicker, defense, and tight end if I want one other mid-tier guy. So for me, it's really going to end up being a heavy. My placeholder lineup is a very heavy Saints onslaught. Which
that's fine. And I think historically what we see with a lot of these showdown slates is that people are kind of like, if you're going with a 5-1 onslaught in this case and you're only bringing it back with 1 Colt, I think you're probably better off going that way a lot of the times because people seem to want to plug into players from the opposite team. The most common build is 4-2 and 2-4, and that wins at the highest rate, but it also wins at a less efficient and suboptimal rate because so many people use it. So the most efficient way to build if in your lineups is actually 5-1. It has the highest win rate relative to the amount that it's owned. So I like a 5-1 stack as well tonight. I think it's probably going to be a little more common with the Saints favored for more with the Saints is a 9.5 favorite, I should say. So there's probably not going to be, if you really want to get contrarian, you might want to do the old 5-1 the other way. But yeah, it's pretty hard to get to a lot of Colts tonight for sure.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, so with regards to game selection, I know I play a more chalkier build. So I do the 3-mans, head-to-heads, etc. Because I know if I go in these large field tournaments, unless I have the lineup, I'm going to be very common. And very common doesn't mean you're going to break through the 20% that are getting paid out. It means if I have a good night, I'll finish in the 30th percentile. Okay, that's well below the cash line of tournaments, but it's there in 50-50s and 3-mans and head-to-head. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking. And then the other half of my cash in play, as I've talked about on these shows, I do the build and set rules and all of that within my optimizer and get it going where I would like it to be. So, but that's not happening tonight. So guys, I'm fading. T.Y. Hilton, I will have about 10% of my lineups. That's it. I don't think he's healthy. And as you mentioned, he needs the speed, and the Saints have a really, really good defense. I really like Jack Doyle. I think having T.Y. Hilton helps him quite a bit, just because it's one more person the defense has to take care of. Maybe it gets those linebackers a little slower, or they have to play more 5, more nickel, etc., and worry more about the wide receivers. Because frankly, Pascal and who is it? Johnson and some of those other guys. Not exciting how they had to re-sign Dontrell Inman, who was with the team last year. He played a few games for San Diego this year, and then was free agent, or he'd been released on waivers. So they had to bring him in because everybody else is hurt. Eric Ebron's out, 2 of their other decent receivers are out, etc. So the cupboard's kind of bare. So for me, it's really consolidating on the Saints, as we mentioned, but within the Colts, I really like Naheem Hines because he's cheap. I got to keep saying that. How many touches do I think he'll get? I think he'll get 3 or 4 carries, and I think he'll get 5 or 6 targets. So let's call that 8. That's not very many, okay?
It's not great. I mean, it's probably like a worse play on FanDuel or Yahoo, where you're only getting the half point. So if you want him, I think in PPRs, it's not a bad. He also led the team in snap count last week, 56% as opposed to 44% for Mac. Mac's as well, just not involved in the passing game at all. This has pretty much become like a committee on some level. And like Mac looked great last week. He broke a couple. He had 13 carries, I believe, but he has 2 targets in this offense since week 8. And so he's really just touchdown dependent in a game where New Orleans has a little bit of a pass funnel, I'd say, and you're more likely to be able to score on them through the air versus the ground. They had one of the better run defenses in the NFL. So I'm right there with you on oh my God, Naheem Hines, because I think you might as well take the price discount. And I think you could also even take like Jordan Wilkins, who like as maybe like as a one-off if you want to do some just like maybe once. But yeah, Naheem Hines I think is a great play, especially game script as well, because if you want to do a 5-1 stack and you want to bring it back with Naheem Hines, the odds are that if the Colts are down, he's going to be getting the ball a lot, and he's going to be working in passing down situations a little bit more. So I like where your head's at with that one.
Yeah, so we've got Hines, and you mentioned with Mac, he has 14 targets on the season.
Yeah, just not getting work in the passing game this year, and which is a little bit surprising. I mean, I guess I kind of assumed he was more of a bell cow, or I assumed he would be in this spot or heading into this year, and he just hasn't been. So fire up some Hines, I think, in your 5-1 stacks, and just sit back and cash all that money.
All right, because they're asking about Zack Pascal. So I do actually have some thoughts for him. I had ranked him, I had said I put in. So again, I've called out my article, but here's sort of my rankings. I had T.Y. Hilton at number 8. I don't trust that he's fully healthy. That's where he is based upon his price. It's not like we're getting a nice break for him, and he could be more in the DK world, or probably decoy. He could be trying to keep the defense busy as opposed to doing a lot offensively. That makes me a little bit nervous. So I've got Zack Pascal he's the first of my secondary plays. The reason he's in that secondary spot is we're looking at probably 35 pass attempts today. We got 38 and 40 the last 2 games. From Jacoby Brissett. He is much better than he was when he filled in like 3 years ago for Andrew Luck. He's more than just a game manager, but he's not the most accurate of guys. He has a hard time getting the reads and seeing the blitzes. He's getting better almost every week. So I think they're going to be fine with him going forward, but I know it feels like a lifetime ago. As I put this in the article, it was just week 3 of preseason when Andrew Luck retired. That was
Yeah.
that wasn't even 4 months ago. So they went in with Andrew Luck being the starter, he's coming back, etc. to, all right, Jacoby, in 10 days you're taking you're leading the team for the rest of the season. There is no Andrew Luck. He's at, and then everybody kept getting hurt. So that hasn't necessarily helped him. So the reason I have Pascal down there is I don't think we're getting a discount on him. And even if a few targets, which they should at least throw to T.Y. Hilton, if 5 go to him, that's less that go to Pascal. So I'm a little nervous about that. That's why I have Jack Doyle up there and Naheem Hines ahead of him. The other thing we don't fully know about, he doesn't have a huge track record, but Marcus Johnson has been getting some looks in the absence of everybody else. My notes here, sorry. We've got Paris Campbell, Devin Funchess, Chester Rogers, all out. That's a lot of guys. Eric Ebron, out. Marlon Max missed a couple games. It's so they've been just doing patchwork here. But Marcus Johnson over the last 2 weeks has 13 targets for 7 and 160 and a touchdown. Pascal has 19 targets for 12, 185 and a touchdown. So let's just say we cut that in half and call it 6 for 90 for Pascal. Now knock him another 25% off that, because let's just assume at least those air yards and or targets are going to T.Y. Hilton. You don't have a very good play unless he gets into the end zone. So that's sort of my thought process behind why I'm crossing some of these guys off. It's not willy-nilly. These are sort of how we talk about what the game flow is going to be, Nolan, or I don't like to use game script, but a various outcome, and you build around that. I've gone in and just said, here's how I feel about each player. Who's left standing? Now who do I want to make up my player pool? So that's the approach I'm taking tonight.
That's fair. I think another problem here as well is they're overpriced, right? So I think both Pascal and to some extent Marcus Johnson is overpriced. So I think what's going to happen now that Hilton is back and Chester Rogers is out, is what you're going to see is Pascal's going to move a lot inside into the slot, which does mean a matchup against PJ Williams. PJ Williams, one of the worst slot corners over the past 2 years in the NFL. He's allowed a 118 passer rating this season, 38 receptions on 55 targets, 470 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So 101.2 yards per snap. That's the reason to go to Pascal, I think, because I'm expecting him to go back into the slot and run more of his routes there. And I would say Marcus Johnson's probably a little more suited to the outside. So that's he's expensive, but he's not getting a lot of ownership. And I think if you want to do like some stacks where you're favoring maybe the Saints running game and you're bringing it back with the Colts passing game, I think that works. I mean, I'd be stacking him up probably with Brissett if you're doing it. But we've seen weirder things than that happen. So this is kind of a lot of these Colts to me are pay up to be contrarian spots.
Yep, and that's an excellent way of saying that. So I think that goes through the majority of the viable Colts players. Brissett's he's in there. We hope, maybe he runs one in. But upside for him, or realistic projection for him, probably about 230, 240 passing yards, 1.2 touchdowns, rushing yards 0.3, or rushing touchdowns 0.3. That's not great, but he's one of 2 starting quarterbacks in this now. So we all want to play the Saints. Okay, well, that's, of course it feels better. They project so much better. But focusing in on the popularity, the ownership, etc., that's when you have to start really considering the Colts, as Nolan succinctly mentioned there a little while ago with your build. So I think I will probably try to go 4-2 with most of my builds, meaning I want 2 Colts. But that could be the defense, it could be the kicker, it could be Naheem Hines, it can be Doyle, it can be a variety of guys. So that's where I'm going to try to find my differentiation, because if I just run this one, it's going to literally come up 5 ones, because I don't have time to build any of the if you're a pass catcher, do this rule on air right now. So I think I'm just going to set it as play 4 Saints and 2 Colts for half of my half in play. So a quarter of my lineups are going to be that. But
yeah, that's fair. I think are you doing large GPPs or
no? See, this is why I don't like to play the large ones. One, I don't like the top heavy payouts. I think it's fool's gold to get there. obviously people win, and there are a handful of people that seem to win relatively frequently. But even like Drew, we've talked about this before, Drewby and Big T and Alex himself, you see their names up at the top a lot. Drewby posted a chart the other day, and it said a few weeks ago, and he said basically if you take out my 3 best weeks from when I went on this heater of really getting into showdown slates over the last 3 years, I would essentially be a break-even player. Wow. Yeah. Now he's wildly successful and has probably netted, $250,000 plus doing this. Mm-hmm. But he would be nearly a break-even player without those really good days. That's just kind of eye-opening. And I'm taking what he had written on Twitter, but he's a very honest guy. He's very transparent. He's not, making that stuff up or being hyperbolic around it. But that's the kind of boom and bust that you're in. So that's him playing all the showdown slates for the last, 100 of them, or however many there've been since he really started doing this, and 3 of them were his make or break. How many of us are being disciplined enough to stick around for 100 slates at whatever buy-in level we're at until we can be good at this? No, very few of us. Very few of us. We're doing this for fun and entertainment. So when I look at the showdown slates, I don't build them comfortably. I build them comfortably, which particularly on FanDuel, you're not going to win the big prizes because comfortable is what everybody's doing. Because there's no 1.5 multiplier on your captain. I like the 1.5 multiplier on your captain. At least I have to get a little creative with it. So for me, I've chosen DraftKings, but I know it's the 50-50s and the 3-mans where I do better at. But tonight I'm looking, I didn't have time to enter very, very many of them. So I am in, oh God, I may not have entered any actually. I'm in the Minimax, quarter, never mind. Oh, apparently I signed up for a Monday night through Saturday morning game slate. Oops. Let's run a train on that one. That's what I just downloaded out of DK. Good to know. So I got 15 minutes to fix that too. Okay, there we go. Now I've got my download file. So I'm in a bunch of 3-mans and head-to-heads, and then half my cash in play is in these other tournaments. So again, a lot of these things that we talk about, it's surviving. How are you going to live to play another day without depositing again and again and again? So back to tonight's game, circling back in fully. For me, it's going to be very, very heavy Drew Brees, very, very heavy Michael Thomas. I am consciously going away from Alvin Kamara by design. I think he's phenomenal. He's outstanding, etc. He hasn't topped 100 rushing yards this season. He hasn't topped 100 receiving yards. He is averaging 97 combined rushing and receiving yards per game, so that's pretty good. Let's not take that away from him. And he's number 2 on the Saints in targets, receiving yards, and receptions. But he's found the end zone twice. When they get down into the red zone, a third of the touchdowns have gone to the tight end position. A few have been rushing touchdowns, and then the rest have not been in red zone touchdowns. So they're not even looking for him. He can score from anywhere on the field. We've seen him do that throughout his career, including kickoffs and other stuff, but we just haven't seen it this year. So that could end up with egg on my face for that, but that's where I'm going for this one. So I'm going super heavy on the top 2 guys and light on the others. We'll see how it happens, Nolan.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Let's see. Latavius Murray plays about a third of the snaps. Has had 60 rushing yards in 2 of the last 3 games. Doesn't really get receptions. Capable of it, but, we got 2 target hogs here. So I'm not really excited by him. But the other main guy I've got is Jared Cook. So I will read off because I didn't do it in time last night. I am playing, and this is, I'm doing these in the 3-mans. This is going to be a chalky as hell lineup, and it's not going to win tournaments. So I don't mind giving it out. But this is what I'm doing. The sites frown on us giving out our lineups. They seem to come after us, Nolan, but they don't come after the actual lineup sellers, which is very, very odd. But today, it's a fun day. So Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, Jared Cook, Naheem Hines, Saints defense. I feel better about them than I do the Indianapolis defense. Indianapolis defense is just fine. Saints have the 3rd fewest sacks and the fewest turnovers. They have allowed 8 turnovers this season. That's not a lot of opportunity. That means, well, since every time I say that, it seems like the other team returns a touchdown. Congrats on the Colts for getting a defensive touchdown, but I don't feel good about them, so I'm not playing them. And then I went with Will Lutz. I could have gone with a variety of other guys there, but they're all dart throws, but I'm going with Lutz, because if the drives stall out, or get close. I'm hoping they don't quite get it into the red zone. If they get it in the red zone, I've got Cook. If I've got Michael Thomas already. And if they don't get it in the red zone, then ideally I've got Will Lutz. So I'm trying to capture everything that the Saints do. I'm hoping they score 28 points tonight. Or 27 because I want some field goals. But you get the gist there. What is your lean on tonight's player pool that you're working on?
For which, sorry, specifically?
For DK.
What's my lean? Well,
are you heavy on any particular guys? Are you not? What are you?
I mean, one guy I do like relative to the field, I think, is Tre'Quan Smith. He's going underowned relative to Ted Ginn Jr. Hasn't really done much this year, but I think that if you look at the snap counts and you look at the routes run over the past 2 weeks, he is out snapping and out route running Ted Ginn, and he is cheaper, and he is not getting much ownership tonight. So I think adding him into your lineups is a contrarian move. I think you could also consider maybe going with like Brees stacks without Michael Thomas to get, if you're entering large GPPs, so you go with like a Ginn and a Smith, or a Ginn and a Cook, Smith and a Cook combo. Like that might be an option to differentiate yourself, because I feel like a lot of people are probably going to have these cliched lineups where it's Thomas, Kamara, Brees. The pricing is soft enough to make that happen. So, and then, I do like Latavius Murray as well as a contrarian play. We have him going a little bit over-owned. He's a 3% captain, and we have him projected for a 1% chance of being the top player. Similar util kind of splits there as well, a little bit over-owned in the util spot. But he gets goal line work, and if this game's a blowout, you could see like a kind of game script where maybe you pair two running backs with the Saints D, kicker, maybe one of Thomas Brees or something, and then bring it back with a Colt. That's the kind of game script we could see tonight with a 10-point total, and New Orleans favored by 10.
Ooh, what do we have with regards to the boom bust, as we have 10 minutes left here? Right. Or the stacks. I forget what Alex calls that. The tool he's been kind of working on, similar to his baseball stacking tool and his
Top Shot. That's what I've been citing.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and then in terms of value plays, I guess value per dollar is always something we have to factor into some of this ownership. And Jacoby Brissett is coming out. It's not often that you see that on these showdown slates, that our top value play is actually someone who's viable, because normally it's $100 player that we have projected for 2 points or something, and price per dollar is nuts. We don't have any of that tonight. Jacoby Brissett is our highest value play on the slate at his price point, and then Will Lutz. Will Lutz is second. So not too. I think those are pretty good options there. Kickers tend to go a little bit under owned. They're safer plays. And I also think you can do some 5-1 stacks and just bring it back with a solo Jacoby Brissett as well, because he does have that rushing upside. He is capable of putting together, I think he has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. He is capable of putting 40 or 50 yards on the ground, and that of course means you don't necessarily need to correlate as well.
All right. Yikes! I'm not getting, in my little crunch here, I'm not getting the Saints defense as much as I want, so let me tweak that. I am getting heavy Michael Thomas. I'm completely fine with that. I was getting 70% Kamara uncapped. I've set him at 25% because I want to come in under the field. We have the field at 46%. These are the utility spots, not the captain spot. I'm getting 10% Taysom Hill. That is the backup quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and hey, he blocked a kick already this year, so I'm hoping for a trick play. I would want at least one lineup with Josh Hill in it, because he is sort of the red zone guy if it's not going to Cook or Murray. And then for captains, I am going, let's see, Michael Thomas is at 13%. We're going to set that at 30. Drew Brees is at 10%. I'm going to set that at 20. I'm going to put everybody else at 5 because I want to get those guys. And voila. This is what happens when you don't have time to set rules, Nolan. We will see how it happens. I mean, half this is luck anyways, so not Andrew Luck, because he's not up. All right.
I feel like I'm kind of thinking maybe a little bit more about some contrarian stuffing in a few last minute contrarian stacks on the Colts side, and just going with maybe one Saint on the way back and doing a 5-1. I guarantee you, no one's going to have that. So if on the off chance the Colts offense is, it's decent, it can move the ball. We'll see how that goes. I was just looking up had a few stats here as well. I think this is an interesting game in the trenches here. We have New Orleans offensive and defensive lines have been great this year. New Orleans is the second best pass blocking unit and fourth best run blocking unit. That's where there are real advantages in this game over the Indy defense. Indy defense ranking 25th in run defense. So there's a pretty huge discrepancy between these, and that's why I think that even though New Orleans hasn't run the ball at a rate that we've been accustomed to these past couple of years, I would expect them to try to establish the run and use that to their advantage. On the other side, though, the Colts also have great run and pass blocking units, but the Saints run defense is equally good, and they have some solid pass rush as well. So the advantage is definitely here on the Saints side of things, I think.
Yeah, it makes for a very biased approach. Last night I tried to go unbiased. Did not have a good night, but there we are. Let's see. Would you consider playing multiple of the kickers and defenses on a lineup? I've got two of mine. Normally I set that rule. I didn't tonight, but the way I've got it configured, I won't get three. But I'll have two. Would you go more? Do you ever set a rule for that, or do you take what?
I don't, but just because the kickers always tend to project out so well for us. But I also think it's kickers in the same lineup are negatively correlated. So we don't often see two kickers appearing in the top lineup. You're probably better off just sticking with one kicker. But we've seen it in the past work. So this is one of the tough things with showdown slates is just kind of figuring out like what's noise and what actually works together. I'd say that they're negatively correlated, but I also say that you're probably very few people are putting in both kickers into a lineup as well. So,
all right. And as we're getting down to the lock here, I want to give a little shout out here to Fantasy Draft here. They are the sponsor of the show. Reminder that they have rake-free fantasy football. How do they do that? Well, you have a subscription that allows you to play a certain dollar amount. Everybody gets $100 every 30 days. My current subscription, I see, just ended yesterday. So I'm on a $5.99 plan where I get $1,000 for those 30 days. I've comfortably not hit that cap. You've been playing about $300 or so, 300 to 500 depending on what I'm doing, but about $100 there on the NFL weekends. So with that, let's just say it's $300. That would be about $40 in rake I would be paying on the other sites. I have paid 2 months worth, so I've paid $12 on Fantasy Draft. Therefore, I have saved approaching $30 at this point with that example. Now, I've been playing longer than just those 2 months, so I've saved about $50 in rake, and I've had 3 different 1-month subscriptions there at that price. So I've saved $35. Not a bad way to go.
Just I like it.
And it, again, everybody gets $100 to play for the month. But if you use the promo code AWESOMO, you get 7 days to go through $1,000. So if you're going to have some fun here on these last 2 NFL weekends, you can do that. If you sign up for that, say you sign up on Friday or Saturday, you get that, and you can get it when the contests launch the next week. So you can actually play 2 weeks worth of NFL, even though it's just 7 days of that subscription. Just throwing it out there. Got to plan ahead, but just throwing it out there. Let's see. What else do we have, Nolan? Anything exciting? I'm debating if I just run a train here of this of these Saturday to Monday contests. What do you think? Drew Brees. Tell me if you like the lineup. Drew Brees, Duke Johnson, Marlon Mack, DeAndre Hopkins, Brashad Perryman, Michael Thomas, O.J. Howard, Jared Cook, and the Saints defense.
What is this? Oh, so this is...
It's going through the first game on Saturday.
Oh, weird. I mean, that sounds all right, man. I like it.
Why not? There we go. I'll make sure. I'll put O.J. Howard back there in the...
I lost a season long this week with Winston and Perriman on my bench, so that's where I'm at today.
But you beat me.
Yeah, it beat you, but it was a consolation bracket, so who cares?
I do, because I didn't
I
win
only
in any
played
of my
one.
other ones. I could have used some consolation.
Though I won one on the Julio catch. I was like, I saw on Yahoo I had like a 1% chance of winning, so I was like, screw this. And then I looked back like 2 hours later and forgot about the Julio TD. Crazy.
Nice. All right. Well, we're running this stack here. What is it? Oh, it's only $20. Or I don't care. It's been that kind of day, Nolan. It's been that kind of day. All right. What else do we have here from our friends over here in the old YouTube chat? What Colts kicker? It's McLaughlin, I think. McLovin, something like that. Relatively new guy. I would rather play Lutz if I
McLaughlin,
had
Chase McLaughlin, former
McLaughlin.
49ers
Oh,
kicker.
wow. That must have been a while ago because they've had Robbie Solid Gold for a while.
No, this season when Gold was out.
So he's sort of in that Kai Forbath recycled kicker. I'm surprised he hasn't kicked for the Patriots yet. Dontrell Inman, got some people talking about that. Taysom Hill could break the slate for you. Hey, fingers crossed. Stranger things have happened. Oh my, Travel Bros cashed 92,000 last night. He won a showdown.
Nice.
My
Bravo.
hat is tipped to you, good sir. Well done. Well done. Somebody's saying I've run 100x by running a train once. You know, doing these shows and all the content when you're playing the sub slate, sometimes you'd run a train more often than you would like. We'll talk about that when we get to luck, because I got a funny story about hockey that Nolan would like. They're saying Traquan Smith 100% healthy. Yes, I think he is mostly healthy at this point. Is Inman in play? Hell, he knows the playbook. He played for him last year. He's not the worst idea out there, but I still think Johnson is ahead of him. That means Pascal and Hilton are ahead of him as well, as is Doyle. Makes it a little hard for him. Pascal or Doyle? I would play Doyle. I think that's it. We're 10 seconds from lock there. And we're
locked.
We got it. So here's the funny NHL story. So the other, maybe 5 days ago, maybe it was before the weekend. So this was midweek last week. I tried to upload my lineup right at 7:00, and it ended up not uploading. So I ended up with I want to say Murray was my goalie, and he wasn't starting that day. I had a utility guy. I forget who it was. He was like 20% owned, but he ended up with 1 point. So I couldn't late swap because I'd screwed up my utility spot, and then I had a forward that did okay, and those were the 7:00 games. So I tried to pivot and just make a bunch of teams where I could. So even without 0 from my goalie and crap from my utility slot, which meant I couldn't get too crazy, I ended up getting 10% back. Okay, well, it did. It wasn't a complete debacle. I didn't lose everything, but I got 10% back. I also played the late slate that night, and I was writing the article, and I forgot. So I had my placeholder lineup that was in there. Again, button mashed. Only this time, I had actually clicked a starting goalie and then just clicked a bunch of buttons. That lineup was a 9% lineup and tripled up on everything.
Nice.
What are the odds of that? Just really crappy going into it, really good at the end. So I ended up losing approximately 1/2 of my buy-ins for the day. I will call that a victory from where I started at 7:01. But you know what? That the point kind of going, that's what Showdown Slate is like. Do we really know? Can we really predict this game? Nolan's going to say maybe, because Nolan, do you want to throw out any tidbits about second half DFS?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I think you can definitely gain an edge by just sort of thinking about how the game's going to go, especially if it's like one team has the lead. That other team's going to be passing, and that who's getting the ball first. So those things kind of matter a little bit. And then as well, if you're watching the game, I don't know if there's any in-game analysis available on the web that has like routes run or receptions or anything like that. But you can always, I feel like you can, rostering players who aren't doing well but are getting usage or are getting are running routes is not a bad way to go. And I feel like just paying attention to who's on the field and who's not, and who's getting targeted and who's not, can give you a little bit of an edge. So I like these second half contests. I don't play too many of them, but they're kind of fun, especially if you're drawing dead.
Yeah, I haven't done any of them, but I did during the NBA finals, and I did a little bit during the Super Bowl. So
nice.
Just something to do on. Now I didn't like mass enter and fantasy crunch and all that. I just built a couple hand lineups. and went that
Fair.
route. It is what it is. All right. Well, with that, we're going to get on out of here. But thank you again to Fantasy Draft for sponsoring this show. You can find them out there again at fantasydraft.com. Use the promo code OSMO when you're setting up your subscription, and you have $1,000 in play for your first 7 days. Everybody gets $100 for a month, but that's a way you can get in a little bit more, and then you can run on the subscriptions. As I mentioned, the one I use is the $5.99 per 30 days. Gives me $1,000 in play. Very fair. That if I played through all $1,000, that would be about $150 in costs on the other sites. That is $6 on Fantasy Draft. Definitely check them out. With that, you can follow Nolan on Twitter at Nolan_Kelly. I am at EMACDFS, and it is Osmo_COM. With that game.